Well, hello everybody and welcome to today's e-learning session. It's on universal design for learning and accessibility. We have two presenters that we've had before. Today they're going to team up to do the presentation. One is Douglas Asante, who is a PhD student in the Instructional Design and Technology Department at Virginia Tech. I think Douglas was one of the first presenters we had, and that was in August. And then Rebecca Clark-Stallkamp, who is also a PhD student in Instructional Design and Technology at Virginia Tech. She is a graduate assistant in the College of Engineering, where she is a lead instructional designer for the Virginia Tech Engineering and Online. I welcome them both. Thank you for coming back. And I'm going to turn it over to you all. Thank you again.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Ames. Again, I'm going to speak for Douglas because I'm going first out of the two of us, but we're both very honored to be here again. And yeah, it's a great opportunity. Today, again, I'm going to stick right to the practical, just like I did last week. Douglas and I both work in a very practical setting. Douglas is in Telos. I am in the College of Engineering, and I do something very similar to what Douglas does in Telos. So we've been doing a lot of support for online learning and onboarding during COVID-19. It's been, I'm sure Douglas can attest, interesting, right, Douglas? So we've learned a lot of things. We've also got to apply a lot of things. And one of the things we're both very passionate about is this renewed sense of making things accessible, recognizing that there's a diversity of learners, and that within that diversity of learners, there are various people that have disabilities as well. So very specific accessibility needs and learning needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with universal design for learning, which kind of speaks to the learner as a center, learner-centric design, this idea that there's a diversity of learning needs in your classroom or online. From there, I'm doing a broad overview of tackling those diverse learning needs. Douglas is going to take it very narrow, and he's going to show you some things to do specifically with accessibility, because universal design for learning doesn't necessarily address every learning need, just a broad majority. So hopefully between the two, we can find a balance and give you some principles, some ideas, and help out with making your classes more accessible. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Bear with me for 1 second. And my entire screen. All right. And Douglas, are you able to see the presentation? Just from there. I'm not able to see the chat. You're able to see okay, Douglas? Oh, okay, cool. I just couldn't hear you, sorry. All right, so as I said, today's presentation, I'm going to introduce universal design for learning. We're going to go through some of the pillars of universal design. And then Douglas is going to take over from there, so we'll do a little switch up. And he's going to look at the importance of accessibility, and then he's going to show you some tips and tricks, principles of accessibility as well for course design. So the first thing I kind of want to get a sense of is everybody has some interesting views as to what universal design for learning is, and some people have never heard of it. So if you can, feel free to answer in the chat or holler it out. But what do you think universal design for learning is? Or you can say you don't know. There's no shame in that either. Has anyone heard of what universal design for learning is? Or is this brand new to us?
I think it's been a while for me personally. I could use
Yeah. A refresher.
a refresher.
Okay, cool. So I actually kind of expected yes, Linda, making design accessible to all, exactly. And Obed, yes. So we'll give you a bit of a refresher, and that's usually the case. I was kind of expecting a bit about it. A lot of people have heard of it. They might not have implemented it or fully understand the parameters behind it. So we're going to help with that. To switch back to my presentation here, sorry. All right. So the first thing that I like to get out of the way with universal design for learning is that a lot of people think it's a theory. An argument can be made for that, but it's actually, what it is a framework and a design tool. So CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology, was a Boston-based nonprofit educational company. They're a research and development team. So they wanted to find a way to meet the learning needs in an individual sense, but for the broad majority of people in the classroom, which is kind of tricky. So they did a lot of research, both from the learning sciences side of things and instructional design, learning theory, and they came up with this framework so that they could optimize teaching and learning for the vast majority. What they did with the framework was they turned it into a design tool, and I'm going to give you a website eventually which will show you how they made it into a design tool. The depth and breadth of this design tool is much more than I will be able to teach you today or show you. So you might want to access it as a resource because it's fantastic. As I've kind of mentioned already, the key with UDL is that it centers around the learner and the learner's needs. But what they do is they expand it to the learner and the learner's needs on how can we reach as many people as possible with our instruction in a classroom of, let's say, 200 or 300, or so it's that kind of, it's not one size fits all, but they're attempting to do that, but still look at individual needs at the same time. But the key is keep the learner at the center. Just to give you an idea, it does come from cognitive theory. So there is a background. I'm not going to go in depth into this, but I'll give you kind of an idea. What you'll see here is the color question marks, and I use that to color code the framework throughout the presentation. So you'll see it line up. But what they did was they looked at the what of learning. So that's content driven. So recognizing, discriminating, being able to look through that recognition network in the brain and say what is learning or what are we learning. The why of learning, so that's the affective network. What that means is it's the part of the brain and the learning network that it's motivation. Am I confident about what I'm learning? It's the feelings is what I like to say. And the last is the how of learning. So how do we go about learning? It's the strategic network. So that is the strategies, the metacognitive behind it. How do we regulate our learning? What things will help us learn? And that targets the how. And as I said, you'll see it line up here with the networks with the colors. So the three pillars actually target those networks. So what they do is the first one, just switch back here, sorry. So the what, which is the purple, is multiple means of representation. So that's the first pillar when you're designing or looking at designing instruction. You want to be able, and that's content driven. So when you're delivering content, you should be able to present it in various formats. And that's the key behind multiple means of representation. There's no hidden meaning in that sentence. If you can represent it in multiple formats and ways, you're delivering your content in a more effective manner. And I'll explain a little bit more about each of these after. Multiple means of engagement is the why, so the affective network. And what that means is it's the sense making part of the of UDL. So it's this: if you can provide options for a student to comprehend and turn and process that information in a way that works for them, with different ways of engaging with the information, they're going to be better able, or statistically, they're going to be better able to actually process that information with different options. And then last is the how, so strategic network, is multiple means of action and expression. So this is, again, it's very straightforward. So this is exactly what it sounds like. If learners are afforded various options to demonstrate their knowledge, there's a better chance that they'll be able to demonstrate knowledge in a way that works for them, because not everybody does it in the same way. So again, we've given you the theory, so we like to give the practical side of it. So how do you implement this and design with UDL in mind? I'm only going to give you some very basics, and I'm going to go through the 3 pillars again. So multiple means of representation. So like I said, this is content driven. How do I deliver content to a vast majority of people? If you have 300 people in the class, how do I reach as many students as I can with different learning needs, different ways of taking information in and processing it? So the 3 parts of this pillar is that if you can present different options for perceiving content. So that means print, text, online text, anything graphic, video, audio. The more that you can successfully kind of incorporate these together in a way that still presents it in a clear fashion allows more students to engage with it, because they can understand it in different ways. And you use them to support each other. You don't just take a page and you slap up, you know, as much text and audio and video as you can, because that's not good instructional design. What you want to do is, if you have a visual, you want to support it with text. That way, if you have someone with a cognitive disability in that classroom that has trouble reading, they might understand the print better if they can see a graphic that supports it. So if they're reading something about, you know, a process, and you show a process-driven kind of chart with you know, the squares and the arrows and things like that to draw it out for them, they might be able to better understand the process in written form because they can see it in a visual form. So they support each other. Again, that's different options to support comprehension. And the biggest thing with this is keeping in mind that you want to support language, you want to support science and mathematical expression, and symbol comprehension. All these things are working together in the background. So multiple means of engagement. Like I said, this is what I call the sense, this is my own terminology, I call it the sense-making pillar. So this is how do we move information into usable knowledge? So it's great that you give students knowledge, but how do you make it usable for them? And everybody has this active process going on to make knowledge usable, but they all do it very differently. So how do we reach out and help students do this in different ways? You got to provide options for recruiting interest. So the first thing is, students aren't going to want to engage with it if it's not interesting. It's really straightforward. So what I did for an example here is, learners need to connect to relevant personal knowledge. So the biggest thing is, when we process something, we're taking it in, we're going to connect it to prior knowledge. So experiences that we've had or things that we already know. You can do that in a multiplicity of different ways. I teach a lot of professors to use a very interesting advanced organizer. What that is just something that's going to reach out to the vast majority of students, whether it's a picture, get them thinking, a leading question. I like to use a game. It's my favorite. I know students love games. I love games. Or give them choices. So if you give a student a choice, let's say a couple different questions, and they can choose something that works for them, you're giving them more options, and you're giving them an option to self-regulate. So they get control and choice over their own learning. All right. And the last pillar, so this is action and expression. And this one is the big one for me. This is the one that I kind of, for lack of a better term, harp on with professors a little bit, only because I also have a passion about changing assessments. I like alternative assessment options. So when students learn something, we need to give them a way and more options to express what they learned. They want to be able to show you that they know something, that they've learned something from you, and you want to be able to understand it, or be able to determine whether they've learned something. And for me, that's learning. Like, that's the whole assessment side of things. So what I always say is, you need to present different options for physical action. So for practice, there's got to be different ways to practice and show that they know what they've learned. And then you can give feedback. There also has to be different options for expression and communication. For example, if you have a course essay, I put this here, offer different options for the thesis question. A lot of times it's one question, and they only get to answer that one question. Well, that's one question of the many things they could have learned about that topic. So if you give them various topics or thesis questions to choose from, they can demonstrate what they have learned comfortably in a way that shows you that they did take something out of the course. It's not about that one specific question. Also, the possibility for different types of essays would be another way of handling that. So you could give them different formats. I've tried visual essays before. So those that are very visual can present an essay in picture format or a slideshow format. I've had students that absolutely love that. The biggest thing with this is, let's say if you have that formal exam, this is where I use this a lot, is you could offer something different than that assessment, or leave the exam. If they want to do the exam, you can also give them a project option. It's reaching those students in a way that they can express what they know comfortably, and you can still assess at the same time that they've learned something. Okay, so I'm going to just switch my screen here because I want to show you the UDL guidelines. So that is the basis of UDL. I could go deeper into that. I could show you more examples. But this is something, again, just like Ming's presentation a few weeks ago and mine last week, this is you learn over time. You don't become an expert overnight. It's trial and error again. It's using this framework. So the UDL guidelines, which is right here, I'm just going to pull it up, is, this is from the CAS website, so let me just share it. All right. Can you see that, Douglas, again? Yep, okay, cool. So this is the UDL guidelines. I love this because they've laid it out in a way that's very workable. This right here, you pop it up and it will actually go into much more detail. It also, let's say you want to go to representation. So the biggest thing is if you want to focus on comprehension, you can actually click on this and it'll take you specifically into a slide where it has checkpoints. And it'll give you examples for each of these checkpoints, which are they're deeper parts of the pillars. You pull one up and then it goes into it even more detailed. So they have done so much research on this. It really breaks down. You get into comprehension and they're looking specifically at, you can highlight patterns, critical features, big ideas and relationships. And when you click on this, it'll actually show it even more. So you can just keep going deeper and deeper into this. So that's what I mean by there's so much information. I've spent hours on this website going through and finding things that will help me for my course. It's a great tool. These are the experts. I would recommend nobody else but CAS, because this is what they developed. And we'll put this in the chat for you so that you have it as well. So that's the basics of UDL. Before I let Douglas go ahead and take over, again, like I said, UDL is very broad and overreaching. And some of you are probably thinking, and I know I did it instantly when I learned this, was, well, what if I have specifically someone with a visual, or someone that has a visual disability, and or someone with blindness in class? How do I deal with that? That is a very specific, individualized learning, or target for learning, and building out assessment or instruction for that learner. So there are some things generally in your class that will reach everybody, but deal with specific disabilities as well, which Douglas is going to show you. But there are also very specific things that you can do for accessibility in general as well. So that is it for me. I'm going to stop talking, so everyone knows I like to. And I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to... All right, I'm going to give it over to Douglas there. It's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca, for setting the tone for me.
I hope I set the right tone.
Right. Is it showing now?
Yep, you're good to go. All right, take it away.
All right. Good. So let me reiterate that we're talking about accessibility and UTL, but in terms of accessibility, I mean, accessibility is actually a broad topic, which would take. Hey, is my screen shared? Is my PowerPoint yet?
I can see it, Douglas. And unless you're gonna put it on presentation mode still yet, but that's totally your call.
Okay. All right. All right. Good. So it's a broad topic. So today I want to zero in on accessibility for online learning materials, because that is where the rubber actually hits the road. You know, you want to see how your learning materials, you know, it's able to reach all of your learners, like make room for all of your learners, for them to access. So once accessibility is mentioned, what comes to mind? What do you start thinking about? Well, is it about any of these? You start thinking about availability. You think about something that is reachable, something open. You know, what do you think about? Good. So it could be any of these. Yes. So because of time constraints, I'm not going to get into much detail, you know, when it comes to this, but I just want to be very practical with it. So why do we need accessibility? You know, so it's for content access, such that you would make room for everybody, and then it can provide that ubiquitous use, you know, so every learner in the class would be able to, you know, use it. And by this, you also eliminate barriers, you know, making provision for everybody to actually access it. The interesting thing is that as instructors, we would normally wait for a student or a learner to come forth and then make some requests. Yeah, because I can't see, can you make this larger? Because of this issue, can you do this? You know, so we always would want to base our affordances that we create for learners off what they actually request. But when it comes to accessibility, if you want to get real accessibility minded, then you rather would have to take a step forward, be proactive than reactive by creating or making those accommodations for the learners. Good. So we'll be looking at the accessibility checker on PowerPoint or in PowerPoint and in Word. And then we'll look at color and contrast, images and graphics, and how we can have a good layout to create you know, an accessible you know, document or accessible file for our learners. Then we'll look at videos and audios, how we can make them accessible. How about links? You know, how do you make them accessible? We'll look at tables and then fonts. All right. So when you open your PowerPoint file or your Word document file, you realize that there are tabs lined up at the top. So if you want to do a check, you know, of whether your file is sound accessibly, yeah, then you would want to look at the review tab. When you hit it, you know, there's some buttons here. Of course, you see the accessibility, you know, checker here, you know, to allow you to, you know, see which problems or which issues that border on accessibility that your file has. Let's look at fonts quickly. To make accommodation for everybody in the class, you know, let's say you're presenting something in PowerPoint, then you'll be looking at the font size. So it's advised that, you know, you don't assign a point that is below 24. Yeah, it should be 24 and above. You know, that takes care of, you know, yeah, most of the students' needs. And then also, if PowerPoint, you use the sans serif fonts. Yeah, in a while, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But for Word documents, you can use the serifs. The serifs are, you know, are good. You know, they look good. They make it look nice. So you can use that in the Word document, but not in PowerPoint. Yeah. And then it's also advised that you give a good font contrast. Good. So let's look at the sans serifs. The sans serifs are those kind of fonts with that block edges. You know, in contrast, the serifs would have those sharp and pointed edges, like Times New Roman. So Times New Roman would be good for a Word document because the user gets closer to the text. But with PowerPoint slides, they are a bit farther off, and so you want to use those that have black edges like Arial, Calibri. Others are Trebuchet. All of those are good. Helvetica, yeah, they're all the sans serifs. You can use them to create that accommodation for all learners. And then how about color and contrast? So using color, sometimes you're tempted to use color to lay emphasis on certain parts of our text. So yeah, I'll show you in a short while, and you can understand that. So the advice is that you don't use only color to convey a meaning or to make emphasis on certain parts of the text, and then also apply a good color contrast. And I think that's what I'm doing now. So in the background, you see that I have white space and a contrasting dark text to make the text stand out. So there should be a figure ground or a foreground and a background, color contrast. Yeah. And then you also utilize the accessibility checker. I'll show you how it looks like. And good. So let me talk about using color for emphasis. You see, I have a screenshot here of the document which has fields that somebody should fill out. The instruction says that those areas marked red. So the emphasis on red. Now I don't know whether you see red here, but I do see red. But making accommodation for all students means that you have to consider that some of the students have that color blindness issue, and they might not see the red as it is red here, and so they would struggle a little bit. So in this case, you can still use the red, but make sure you don't use only color to emphasize a point or to kind of like point them to a particular item or element on on the page. One strategy you can use is that you can embolden the text name and then email. So at least you add another feature to it that can help them identify that. Any questions here so far? All right. So this is an accessibility checker. It's WebIn. So you go to the web and then just type in WebIn, and you will find the contrast checker. Yes. So it helps you, measure how contrasting, how well your fore color and then your background color are contrasting. And what I mean by that is that how well the text you are using, contrasts with its background. So there's a slider here which you can slide horizontally, to choose the color you want, and then you can select the background color here, and then you are graded here whether you pass or you fail. So as you slide it, it gives you that option, or it gives you that chance to actually see what you're actually putting out there for contrast. Let me show you a few examples of how great your colors could be. So a light text on a dark background, or a dark text on a light background. And these are non-examples. This is so bad. I feel that this is criminal. You shouldn't do this. Yeah. And then let's go ahead and talk about images and graphics. If you want to use images and graphics, now what happens is that we have a section of learners who might have visual issues. So a student who is blind, accessing a document or accessing a course resource that has images. How do they see that? So they use screen readers to access these elements. And so you'll be thinking of providing an alternative text, the alt text, to these images so that the screen reader will pick it and then read it out in their hearing. Good. Now you also provide a text link to a long text next to the image. So for purposes of making that affordance of describing what is in the image for whoever can see it, you might be tempted to write a whole lot about that. Sometimes it's quite stressful, like it brings an extraneous load on somebody who understands or can decipher what the image is about. So what you do is you put all of that long description, you embed it into A brief text could be like a line long, text. You embed it in there so that it becomes a hyperlink. Once they click on it, they can access, a more detailed information about that, not to bore the other students. And then do not rely on so I'll say that now we're having smart apps like our slide decks would try to generate descriptions for us. You'll be able to pick elements in a graphic and then try to suggest an alt text. Don't rely on that. Sometimes they're vague. Sometimes they don't even match up well with what you want to put out there. So take your destiny into your own hands. Like decide on what actually you want for the description, and then avoid flashing or animated images that repeatedly keep flashing on the site. It disturbs session of the learners too. Let me give an example of an alt text here. So there's that temptation that you might want to write that an image of a woman pointing to, you want to prefix the whole thing with that image, that word image. It's not necessary because the screen reader will do that. So you just have to go ahead and just write something very concise and precise. So these are examples of that. Let me show you how you can embed an alt text into an image. So what you do is you right click on the image, you right click on it, and then this pop-up menu would show up. Then you come right down here, you see format picture, you click on it, you'd have the picture formatting pane showing up here. Then you select the picture formatting tab here. Then you see the alt text where you can drop in your description. So for best practices, describe image and be specific about that, and then make sure the information is accurate. Don't run beyond like 125 words. That would be quite too much. Be as brief as you can. And here I was talking about being concise and then straight to the point too. And then do not use the image off, picture off, because the screen reader will take care of that. Make sure it's discernible and meaningful. Let's look at your layouts. So PowerPoint has templates that you can use. Now, the designers of PowerPoint, designers of Word, and many of these slide decks that we use usually have accessibility in mind when designing that. So you don't know to stress yourself up, or if you don't think you are so comfortable with making sure you can integrate accessibility in all these, then try these layout templates. They are good. And then also maintain consistency in color and font, and then navigation. So if you have your standard links flashed to the left or at the top, make sure that consistently you have them there. And if your headers are 44 by size, maintain that so that it doesn't put too much load, cognitive load on the learner. Yeah, and then utilize the accessibility checker. Ensure that all slides have titles. It's good for a screen reader, and it's good for consistency too. How about links? So when you're writing links, it's mostly seen that somebody provides a text and then it says, for more details, click here. Avoid using that because it's not descriptive enough. The click here to me might imply that when I click on that link, I'm going to find something called click here or a text called click here, which is not a best. So provide a descriptive text of the destination or where actually that link is taking them to. So if it's taking them to the syllabus, now click on the syllabus, then you make the syllabus the link so that once they click on the syllabus, it takes them to the syllabus. And then make sure it's not ambiguous, and then also avoid underlining text, because most hyperlinks are shown with an underline. So if you keep underlining text, some students might feel that they are hyperlinks and will keep clicking. It gets stressful because at a point some might feel that it's a problem with them, or perhaps you wanted them to see some information which is not reachable at that point. So avoid minimize your use of underlining so that you don't confuse them. And one more thing I may have to add is that now some hyperlinks are becoming smarter, such that they are not using the underline to to denote that, but rather it's color. So the color blue in some cases, the hyperlinks have the color blue. So be very careful about when and how you use the color blue, because it's tempting that the students will start clicking on that text thinking they are hyperlinks. How about tables? Make sure you use a very simple, table structure, and then identify the header row, which I'll show you in a second. And then also ensure that the tables have all text. So with the header row, now on the tabs, and you see that there's design. Once you hit it, let's say in PowerPoint, you hit it, you see this here. If you select table and hit this, you definitely see this here. Make sure it's checked, and that makes it accessible. Now, I want to quickly talk about videos and audios. Yeah, sorry, any questions so far? I see I'm speeding up because of the time. I want to make the time. But still, I think we can have like 5 minutes or so for Q&A.
Yeah.
Are there any questions yet?
No, I think you're good. Douglas, does anyone have any questions? Oh, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've ever heard like a clear answer on, when you're using PowerPoints, do you use black font on a white background or white font on a black background? And I remember there used to be this, like, if you're in a big room, you use one or the other, and but I don't know. It just seems like you just stick with black on white is the best way to go, right? I mean, I don't know. Or do you have any insight into that question?
Yeah, so black on white gives you, I think, the sharpest contrast you would want. But sometimes it gets, it doesn't make it too exciting to have only black, on white. You sometimes might want to look at a few exciting colors. So, for example, let's look at this. What I have here is not, black on white or white on black, because sometimes you want to color code. And that is the reason why you have to use the color contrast checker, which is provided by WebAIM. And in that way, you can vary your colors and still get a good contrasting effect. Does that answer it, Matt?
Yeah, I guess that there's always going to be a little bit of human creativity involved in the process.
Right.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Good. And so with videos, you'll be thinking of providing captions, because for students who would have hearing issues, now they would want to see something that talks about, or something descriptive about the videos they are watching. And it's also good for second language learners. I think in my previous presentation, I cited something, an instance where in class, Dr. Lucky, I think, Dr. Lucky has been here. Yeah, Dr. Lucky was talking about, these citations. So I remember she kept mentioning verbatim, and I was struggling for like an hour. I was like, what is verbatim? And somehow I got to understand that she was talking about verbatim, which is how, I'm used to, like hearing it pronounced back home where I come from. I mean, in Ghana, verbatim. But she kept saying verbatim. But once you have the captions on such a video, you are able to tell what actually the speaker, or the one talking in the video, is referring to. It also helps, provide students that sense of engagement. It gets them engaged in what is going on there. Now with captions, we have closed captions and open captions. Open captions are actually engineered into the video, the text in the video, right at the production stage. So you can take them off. And if you do that, sometimes it's stressful for those who don't want to see the captions there. So you rather choose the closed caption, which means that you can either select the captions, or deselect that. Good. And then also we think about live captions. Office 360 provides that. So in that sense, you just click on the slideshow tab, and then you select the subtitle options. Good. So this is what we've been talking about, that you have to use inbuilt features for your documents or your slide decks. And then also make sure that you use the accessibility checker to scan through to see whether there are any issues concerning accessibility. And then keep it simple. Yes, try to use a 24 or above font size, for your PowerPoint. And also it's advised that you use the sans serifs. Then also be consistent with your use of color and then the language. So you would want to use colors, vary them to make it exciting, but don't throw too much colors, on, let's say, a slide. Sometimes it gets confusing. Make sure that they're actually helping convey a good meaning to the learner. Be descriptive enough, and I'm talking about links. Your link should provide descriptions instead of using like click here or click for more details and all that. And then make sure you provide captions and transcripts to videos and audios. Yes. All right. And of course, add all text to your images and graphics. All right. So Asante Sana, right? Yeah. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, we're gonna open it up to questions.
Yeah, I'll start to make the time. So I think I was speeding through. So if there are, certain questions you want me to hit, again, or add, flesh out, I can just do that right now.
And while Douglas is doing that, we did speed through that. I'm going to put some things in the chat that might be helpful. And I think Douglas has agreed to share his PowerPoints. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. And I can as well. So, I mean, these can be resources as well.
Yeah.
Any questions or?
Hey, Douglas and Rebecca.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I wanted to, I think I wanted to, admit to the group, that I only trying to do this a little bit at a time. Like for Canvas, like I already have set up. I just try to go in there and poke around and see what I can do. Because thinking about like redoing everything, which I know you're not supposed to, but I mean, you're supposed to do it from the get-go, but I go in and just redo things a little at a time in hopes over time that I'll have a pretty good collection. Is that, should I be feeling guilty about that? Or?
No, not at all. I have an example actually from I've been guilty too. Okay. So I'll share this with you. First of all, Douglas can agree or disagree with me, but we always say, retrofitting is bad. Like, don't be retrofitting. If you go into it in mind ahead of time, it'll only serve you better in the future. And that is true, but the problem is the reality today is we are retrofitting. So I like to say retrofitting is a learning process. So don't try to do everything at once. I mean, if you are that kind of person, then go for it, but you'll cause yourself a headache. Because especially if you've never thought of any of these things before, if you try to go and fix absolutely everything at once, you will get overwhelmed and you're not going to want, and Dr. Johnson, you'll know this, the motivation to do it in the first place will not be there after. I've been there.
No,
so
true story.
Exactly. So you're just going to quit. Like, you're going to be like, no, I don't want to do this. It's just too difficult. It's too much. So what I've been doing slowly with my own things is, what are some simple things, and Douglas went over these, that I can focus on for myself right now to do better? So small, Dr. Johnson, you taught me this, small changes. So, so I go in and I focus on font, I focus on contrast, and the alt text. It's not perfect. Not everything I do is going to be completely accessible, but I try, and then I fix the things I can as I go. Hopefully that as I, like, these are courses that I'm doing, as I keep adding to my, my repertoire, I guess, more and more gets changed as I go. To be completely honest, I just realized now I'm building a course and I have not, I've been indicating click here on all my links. So guess what I'm going back to do this afternoon on a course that I'm working on is change those links to be more descriptive, because I knew this, but there's so much I was reminded in this presentation. So like, none of us are perfect. They're not expecting you to be unless you're doing a course that's going to be paid for, and you could possibly get sued by the government if you don't do accessibility.
Right.
I mean, there are some things you have, like I have to do quality checks and things like that. That's a whole nother story, like an organizational process. But in your own courses, I think, and Douglas, you can speak this too if you want, it's do what you can now, because I think it's a step towards doing more later. And it's
Yes,
process.
absolutely.
It's very much a process.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you very
So,
much.
yeah, we are at the point where we only have to do the best we can, and the best that fits within this time period. It's not like a normal time, but these recommendations are there, for consideration. That at least you have something to hold on, something to measure, what you're doing and all that. But do what's best, for the time, and then make sure you can just get whatever you're putting out there to your learners. So yeah, one thing about maybe the pop we're using the sans serif, is that sometimes the students would want to access access the file right on the screen, on their computer screen. So it becomes more like a Word document to them. So in that case, you don't worry that much, but you only make that accommodation such that should they decide to project it or put it up at a distance, they wouldn't have those issues. These are just recommendations, right? And then you only have to strike a balance between what is needed at the point and what you can offer, especially during this period of time.
Now, one thing I can offer, and this can be overwhelming, so this is not meant to overwhelm everybody, but it is a great, if you're getting into some deeper accessibility building and online, and you really want to get a powerful background or build up your ability to do this, Douglas and I both use this from time to time, and I'll put it in. So in the US, we have, there are legal mandates, and it's through a triumvirate of the federal law, state law, and then a mandate through Virginia Tech as well. So when those three align, we have to do these things. And we use this. I'm just going to put it in the chat. So it's WCAG. They're the guidelines. And I would just this is the 2.0 guidelines. And it'll say something like the first one here on the list, guideline 1.1. So text alternatives. Provide text alternatives for any non-text content. Some of it's very straightforward, but it'll show you how to meet those on different levels. So there is, satisfactorily meeting it, and then there is actually meeting it on a way that would work for someone with a actual disability, in which this would be a barrier. So a lot of times right now, unless there's an accommodation in your class, and I don't love saying this because I like to work on the basis that we do the best we can, but if someone comes to you and their accommodation is, I am legally blind or I have low vision, then these are the guidelines that you do have to follow. So that means you need to fit your course so that it works for everybody, but it also speaks to that learner, or you give them alternative ways to access materials. One of the things I'll show you we make mistakes, right? Douglas, I mean, you might not want to admit that, but I don't know. We make mistakes. So I'll show you one of my biggest mistakes was in a class that I built. And I had no idea at the time about tables, like tagging tables. And I had no idea about, I work in engineering, so everything's heavily computational. I was taking pictures, so screenshots, and this is what a lot of professors do, screenshots of equations. And then I was just pasting them into the Canvas course. And I thought that was fine. And I did my CPAC training and found out later that a screen reader can't read your picture of an equation. So I had a student come to the professor. They were not legally blind or anything like that, but they used a screen reader because it's something that they used to learn. And they said, I have an issue. And they were upset. They just said, can you find a way for me to get the equations? Because I know there's an equation there, but the screen reader can't read the alternative text for that. And I had done it for tables as well. So the student was missing whole components of the course because I really like my cut and paste picture thing on my computer and didn't realize. So that forced me to learn how to tag tables, a little bit more about alternative text, but also I had to find some tools that would work. If you guys have ever heard of Equatio, it is pretty nifty. It'll actually do a screen reader capable equation because I'm not a math person, so there was no way I could write an equation in an alternative text, and that's very difficult to do in the first place. So what I would say, and it speaks to what Dr. Johnson asks, learn from your mistakes. You're going to make them there, and you apologize and you do what you can to fix it. That's the biggest thing. There was no harm, no foul with the student. We fixed it, and they were super happy about it. But just learn from those mistakes as you go, or listen to your students as well.
Yeah, just a quick one.
Yeah.
So, as an institution, while you consider, going online and designing materials for your learners online, I think that these accessibility principles are things you need to really consider. Because in the United States, I don't know what how things work out in Rwanda, but in the United States, some institutions have actually faced legal sanctions. Even Harvard and MIT, some of their courses online, they were forced to take some content down from their online, learning space because the National Association of Deaf, sued them for not adding captions to videos. Just, you might think just captions, but they were sued, and I mean, there are quite a number of them. So at the institution level, when things normalize, I think that going forward, it's something that you'd have to look at. Trying to make sure that you have all these accessibility recommendations well set. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I highly recommend them as well. I find them not too bad to understand. It's more the implementing it, because everyone tells you how to do something, but doesn't necessarily tell you how to put it into practice. We can put our emails up to be happy to answer questions, or if you get stuck with something. We deal with this every day. I don't know, Dr. Ames, do you have an accessibility department in the school where you are? I know not all schools have them. We are lucky because VT has a very proactive one. They're very innovative. So I was just curious, because if you don't, we can bend the ear of the person that is running the accessibility department here, because we know her very well, to answer questions as well.
To my knowledge, we do not have an accessibility department. And basically what I've been doing is using, Canvas has the accessibility tracker or checker inside, and we've been using that for our Canvas courses that we've been developing. I remember using this. There was a software called Bobby, probably over 10 years ago now, but it was like this accessibility checking software that you could use to check like an entire website somehow. And it had this like little, the logo was like a British police officer, with the helmet. I don't know if it's still around or not.
I love it. No, I've not heard of it myself, Dr. Ames. But do you guys have Ally?
Accessibility is obviously really important to us, because the part of the name of the university is equity, and so we're definitely really, it's a real concern here. And as we grow and sort of, start to more fully understand what it is we're doing as a university with our technology and stuff, I definitely think that this piece is just completely necessary, to the vision that we end up, really pushing forward. That accessibility is just going to have to be there, and a lot of the ideas that you all have talked about today are certainly critical for that. So.
Yeah, and I'm serious. The VT Access VT is our area. They're fantastic. So I'm going to drop her name, but Krista Miller she was our trainer. She is fantastic. You can email her with questions, problems. Like I'll be designing, I'll be like, I have no idea how to do this for this situation. I'll send her an email, she sends it back. So we do have access to help if you guys do have questions. I have no problem doing that. It's our biggest thing is these people are passionate in Access VT, and they train us through grants. They find those resources for us because they want to spread it through the school and then hopefully pass the school, because this is something that's, and this is my personal opinion, this is something that's way overdue in many areas of life in general. There's too many barriers out there. And I have glasses. I wouldn't say that I have a visual disability, but I do have some vision issues, when I'm trying to read. So just the simple fact that someone can make the the point font bigger than 12, I'm happy with that. So like it kind of helps a vast majority of people. You don't even have to have an actual physical or cognitive disability to benefit from UDL and some of the accessibility principles. Like size 24 font, yay. Like I want to be able to read the things. So any other questions? We got about 3 minutes. I hope we haven't sent everybody scrambling back to their PowerPoints. I see here a few.
Thank you, Bob.
Douglas has a lecture in the morning, in the morning. So I'm sorry, not Douglas, Charles, Dr. Charles. That's why he's here.
He says, I must rework my PowerPoint.
Douglas.
I'm sorry, Douglas, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Can we have access to the record of this session?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I've recorded it and I'll load it to our YouTube channel and share it.
Awesome.
That's helpful.
Dr. Charles, did you want Douglas's PowerPoint presentations as well? I'm sure we could send them your way if you prefer.
Yeah, that will be helpful as well.
Yeah. Can you email Douglas? Douglas, are your emails there? Oh, you're on mute, Douglas.
Yeah, let me do that.
Yeah. We'd be happy
Okay.
to send them. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Definitely.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you again, Douglas and Rebecca, for your presentation. And I guess that'll wrap things up for the day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for having us. It was a great opportunity. Really enjoyed it. I think Douglas's email there, but just not if you enjoyed it, Douglas. Douglas and I are good colleagues, so.
Yeah, she always does that.
I always pick up. It's okay. We're good friends, so.
Well, thanks, Matt. And you have a great day.
Yes, you as well.
I mean, great rest of the day. Yeah, I mean, I think your day's so.
You guys are almost done. We're just starting here.
We've got another hour or two, depending upon if we want to go home. Work.
Okay.
The if, right? If we want to go home. Or if we can go home.
Well, I just moved into a house here and I don't have internet yet, so it's kind of the only way for me to kind of get some things done. So
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Unless I want to go, I can't sit in a coffee shop for 5 hours.
Oh, I'm done. That's not me either. I can't do it. I'm the same way. So, but no, thank you. Really appreciated both of them. I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt. It's been a great opportunity. At least getting back home. Yes, like home to Africa. Yeah.
Home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, alrighty. Well, have a good rest of the day.
In Kinyarwanda, it's Maracoses. Thank you. So.
Oh,
Miracle. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm learning a little bit.
Oh yes. Wow.
All right. Have a good day now.
All right.
You as well. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yes, you as well, Douglas. Take care.